Dan here on the best podcast available. Happy to be joined, as we are every year. It's like an annual tradition with the great Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports NFL draft analyst, also covers the NFL throughout the season. You can also hear new podcasts this year, which I'm a big fan, with the First Pick podcast with Rick Spielman, doing an outstanding job on that, Ryan. And appreciate a few minutes, man. We're counting it down. We're close. We're close to barbecue and a little draft in Kansas City coming up here sooner rather than later in the next week and change. It's been a crazy draft season, I feel like. You know, we're not really sure what the quarterback situation is. We think there's some good ones in there, but from a draft standpoint, different than in years past. We don't have that loaded wide receiver class. What do you make of everything here about 10 days out from the draft?
Yeah, it's incredibly different. And here's the thing. So a year ago, there's only one quarterback, right? That went in the first round. Kenny Pickett went 20 to the Steelers, and the next one didn't go until the third round. This year is going to be completely different. And while last year's draft was exciting on many levels, this is going to be much more exciting because fans care about quarterbacks. Fans that have teams that need quarterbacks certainly care about the order in which these quarterbacks go. And I think that's where the conversation starts. Quarterback's going to go first, probably go second, probably go third if a team trades up. And then the question becomes, is there a fourth quarterback? How high does he go? And that's basically me prefacing this by saying I have questions about Will Levis. And I think there are teams that they're not scared off by Will Levis, but they don't like him top five. And that's just the nature of the beast. And part of me wonders if this is not so much for the NFL teams because they appear to have gotten it right, but for media and fans, because last year, myself included, I was trying to talk myself into Matt Corral being a first-round pick, into Malik Willis being a first-round pick, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell. Three of those guys won the third round. Sam Howell won the fifth. Sam Howell may end up being the best of the group. But that just shows you that the NFL teams, even though quarterback is an incredibly important position, and a lot of times they're overdrafted, teams are willing to be patient, at least last year. Fast forward to this year. So Bryce Young, he's going to go early. CJ Stroud, he's going to go early. The order is what's we have to wait to sort of find out. I've heard that the Panthers are on CJ, so we'll find out in 14 days for sure. But then after that, Anthony Richardson, everyone knows, incredibly athletic, only had 13 starts, only completed barely 50% of his passes. And there were a lot of peaks and valleys in that tape. We talked to him at the combine, and he said, basically, and this makes sense when you see the young man in person, I've been the biggest, strongest, fastest person on every field I've been on. So I tried to do too much last year for Florida and I have to learn to play within the system. And I think that's the big task. Can you get him to play within the system? And then Will Levis, of course, looks like a quarterback you'd build in the lab. Last season, his tape was not great. Millions of reasons. The offensive line wasn't very good. The offensive coordinator wasn't very good. He was injured. There's no tougher player in this draft than Will Levis. But that aside, are you going to take him top five if you're a team that needs a quarterback? And there's been some concerns about, based on what we saw on the tape, whether he is a top five guy that you take that can start right away, because I'm not sure he is. I like him more towards the middle to the bottom of the first round for teams that have needs down there. Buccaneers obviously come to mind. Maybe a situation where the Rams trade up because, like the Browns, they don't have a first-round pick either and have something in line for a post-Matthew Stafford world. But that's a quarterback situation as we sit here. I think CJ goes first. I like Bryce a little better, but obviously Frank Reich's the new coach there. They have Jim Caldwell on staff, Thomas Brown's the new offensive coordinator, and they're trying to win now with owner David Tepper. They like bigger quarterbacks. So I think that's the direction they're going. And then that means that the Texans can take Bryce, and they've been high on Bryce for quite a while. So that's also something to keep an eyeball out for.
All right. Why do you like Bryce Young?
You watch Bryce play, and that's why I like Bryce Young. And here's the thing, like CJ is a really good football player. And you watch him in the fall on television, you're sitting at home on Saturday and you're going, okay, yeah, he's making some plays, but he's throwing to last year was Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison the second. And he made plays this year without Jackson Smith-Njigba, by the way. So he was able to do that. But Marvin Harrison had a huge season in 2022. And you sort of get away from the fact that he's actually doing a lot of this as well. A lot of this is on CJ. Like, he's making these throws. He's layering these throws to the second level. He's also had an offensive line that every year you have two or three guys that are getting drafted high. Alabama, I mean, it's hard to make a sob story for Alabama. But in Bryce's defense, he hasn't been throwing to the same receivers that Tua and Mac Jones were throwing to, all those first-round picks that got drafted. He's throwing just a bunch of guys, many of whom may not get drafted. and he does it consistently off platform. There's probably no one better in this draft that moves inside the pocket with as much subtlety and effectiveness as Bryce does. Never rattle. We were talking to Will Anderson at the combine, and he said, I've seen Bryce get hit by SEC defensive linemen time and time again, and every time Bryce gets up, and he's better on the next play. And another way to say that is that no moment's too big for Bryce. We've seen moments overwhelm quarterbacks. We've seen moments overwhelm Will Levis at times and Anthony Richardson, and you don't see that with Bryce. The only issue is that he's 5'10". That's a pretty huge issue. That's historically small by quarterback standards. But if he's 6'1", guess what? We're talking about him like we talk about Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, and he's going first, and that's a wrap. And I think he starts from day one. I think he probably has the best rookie season. Obviously, fit matters and players around him matter. The Texans aren't a great football team now, and neither are the Panthers. And it'll be fun to watch those two organizations. Should CJ go to Carolina and Bryce go to Houston, how they track over the course of the season. But there are no holes in Bryce's game other than the fact that he's short. And you might say, well, balls get batted down. He didn't get balls batted down at Alabama. And I think, the best predictor of future success is what you've done in the past. And this dude has been incredibly successful.
Talking with Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports NFL Draft Analyst, NFL coverage and analyst throughout on CBSSports.com, also CBS Sports, multiple platforms, podcast as well with the First Pick podcast with Rick Spielman. All right, let's talk about those Ohio State guys. Jackson Smith-Njigba, a lot of people think there could only be one wide receiver. I don't think that'll be the case that goes in the first round, but obviously he's toward the top of the list. Paris Johnson has really elevated, and I know in your latest mock you have him going 9th to Chicago. And then a guy that I know Browns fans are hoping maybe is around later on night number 2 of the draft in that third round, Zach Harrison, the edge rusher out of Ohio State. If you could talk a little bit about those guys.
Yeah, let's start with Zach Harrison. I think Zach Harrison will be around. I talked to teams. So I was at the Ohio State Pro Day to watch CJ, then all the other guys were there as well. And by the way, Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he's going to be pretty good. Just a hunch. Watching him catch passes from CJ, he flashed. But in terms of Harrison, sweet mercy. Again, I was talking about Will Levis building someone in the lab. That's what a defensive end looks like when you build him in the lab. He is long. He tested well. The issue is he's a little high-waisted, and that's sort of a scouting term. But his long legs are sort of skinny-ish, and at times you want those defensive ends to be a little thicker in the lower half to when you're setting the edge against these offensive linemen in the NFL. That said, again, the arm length, the athleticism, he's a little stiff at times in his movements when you watch the tape, and you'd like him to be a little bit more explosive. And I think the reality is that when you talk to NFL teams about him, they love the body type and they love the player, but he may be there when the Browns eventually get on that clock with pick 74. He might be there pick 98. He might be there pick 111 in the 4th round. I think I've heard mostly early day 3 because of the stiffness at times. But if you told me he went in the 3rd round, I would certainly believe that all day long. Paris Johnson Jr., 36-inch arms. Like his arm length is the same as DeJuan Jones. And obviously he weighs 70-ish pounds, depending on the day, less than DeJuan. And you have the position flexibility. Played right guard in 2021. Last year played left tackle. Athleticism out of this world. Had a great pro day, did the workout. I know some teams were unhappy that DeJuan didn't work out at the pro day, but that was his choice, and that's fine. But Paris worked out, and he did himself favors by working out because you were able to see him move in person. You were able to see the athleticism in person going through the offensive line drills, and that showed up on tape. There's stuff that needs to be refined, but you can say about every player at every position coming into the draft. But there are teams that like him a lot. There are teams that like him in the top 10 a lot, and there are teams that are considering trading up to go get Paris Johnson Jr. probably inside the top 10. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, it's one of those cases where what have you done for me lately? You forget about him because he only played in 3 games, only had 5 catches because of the hamstring. But where we're in the Super Bowl, we talked to Garrett Wilson and CJ Stroud separately, and both of them said without provocation that Jackson Smith-Njigba was the best wide receiver on that team in 2021. He led the team in receiving. He led the team in receiving yards, and that group includes, as I mentioned, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, both first-round picks. Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to be a first-round pick. He's going to be a top 5 pick. And of course, C.J. Stroud. So that gets your attention. And the short shuttle 3-cone that Jackson did at the Combine was the best of anyone there. Over the pro day circuit, there have been over 1,000 kids that work out of these pro days at every single position all across the country. Jackson ranked second, I think, in the 3-cone and short shuttle, and that's a great indication of short area quickness and ability to change directions and those sorts of things. He ran a 4.5 at the pro day. It looked fast in person. Every team I talked to said that's fast enough. So he is going to be in the conversation for wide receiver 1. I heard primarily it's him and Zay Flowers, interestingly, out of Boston College. You haven't heard a lot about Zay, but teams love Zay as well. So Jackson didn't play much of the season because of the injury, but I think a lot like Jamar Chase is not going to matter. We've seen him work out. We know what he can do. We saw his tape in 2021. And just like the year before with Jamar, when he didn't play the last year because of a COVID opt-out, turns out it didn't matter. He's a good football player, and I think that's going to be the case with Jackson. He's going to come in and have the same sort of productivity that we saw from his teammates Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave when they came into the league last year.
Talking with Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports NFL and NFL Draft Analyst. Follow him on Twitter at Ryan Wilson CBS. Is the best position in this draft also the deepest position? And if so, what would that position be in your opinion?
I think cornerback is pretty deep. I think that's a great place to start. Tight end is deep, which is kind of weird to say because you don't say that very often. Edge rusher has some guys that you can get on day 3. They're going to contribute right away. Now, defensive line, linebacker, wide receiver, as you mentioned, those positions are not deep. But in terms of cornerback, and the Browns could be in the market for a cornerback for sure. Christian Gonzalez, these guys are going to be, they'll be at their new sites giving their press conferences, and then looking for homes by the time the Browns get on the clock, so they don't have to worry about these players. But Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Deontay Banks, Joey Porter Jr., those guys will be gone in the first round. There's buzz that Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State could be a first-round pick, and he's interesting because he's 6 feet, but he weighs 166, and that might give Browns fans flashbacks to Greedy Williams. But this guy is an absolute ball hawk. I think he had 13 career interceptions, 6 pick sixes, and he is probably not even probably. He's the best ball hawk in this class. And another player that's getting some first round buzz is Juju Brents out of Kansas State. He's 6'2.5". Ran a 4.53, but again, like Jackson, Smith-Njigba, the short shuttle and the 3-cone were off the charts, and just talks about that short area quickness. If we're talking about the when the Browns are on the clock, some guys that maybe will be there. Garrett Williams out of Syracuse towards ACL during the season. He's a tough player against the run, can play in coverage. He's undersized in terms of his height, weight, but he plays much bigger than that. I think he's 5'10", 5'11", like 185, 190. Corey Trice is a huge cornerback out of Purdue, ran in the 4.4s. He also tested off the charts. Let's see. Let me get one more name here. How about let's go with Eli Ricks. LSU transfer went to Alabama. Long kid, I was at the Alabama Pro Day, and he's fluid. His movements are fluid. There's some can he be coached up concerns, but in terms of immaturity, not a bad kid, but just that sort of thing. That said, if you can put up with Nick Saban for a year, you can probably handle just about anything. He is long, ran 4.6, maybe 4.58. He plays faster than that. Didn't start at Alabama last year, but when he got on the field and got his opportunity, he took advantage of it. And he could be there in the 4th round, even though at times he's played like a day 2 talent for sure.
All right, so we talked about wide receiver, edge. I know defensive line and linebacker that aren't as deep as in years past. What about the running back room, especially the running back position, maybe on day 3? I've read some stuff. I know that you've talked about it a little bit as well. I feel like the Browns could be in a spot there to go get another guy, especially if they don't bring back Kareem Hunt right now, Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, a guy that they picked up last year from Cincinnati. But I feel like there could be a need there at running back maybe on day 3. What do you think about that running back position?
It's deep, and that's another place where so the conversation starts with Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, right? But the issue is you can draft those guys in the 1st round or the first 40 picks, but are you going to get the same? Are you overpaying for productivity, right? Because Dameon Pierce, I think, was a 4th round pick last year, went to day 3, went to Houston and just balled out, and that's the math you're doing, and that's actually good news for for the Browns. And it's funny that the Saquon Barkley draft, when he went second overall, I think Nick Chubb goes in the 30s. And you could argue Nick Chubb has been more effective, and probably pretty easily, because Saquon missed time with the ACL injury. And Chubb's getting paid now, as he should, but you had him on that rookie deal where you were saving a little money in the front end. But either way, so there are going to be a lot of guys that are going to be available. A guy that I absolutely love, I don't know if he's going to be there early or that late third round pick or the 74th pick, is Roschon Johnson out of Texas. He might be there. Like, I like him a little more than some other people do. And Roschon was the backup to Bijan in Texas. He's bigger. He's probably a little stronger. He's not as fast, not surprisingly, but he has low mileage. He's a one cut and go run over guy type running back. He gives you an added element in the special teams, both in coverage and return, and he can block all day long. So he checks every box, and he's a great kid. We got a chance to speak with him as well at the combine. I love Roschon Johnson. I love him, like second round, love him, but he may be there in the third, and that could be a target. Completely different player. Maybe there at 74 because of his size is Devin Achane, the super sprinter speed running back out of Texas A&M. He's only 188, but he runs between the tackles like he's 250. And I was talking to him at the combine because he legit ran a 10.1800, which is, I've been told, extremely fast. I said, have you ever, over the course of your 20-something years on Earth, anyone ever ran you down? He goes, I have no idea what it feels like to be caught from behind. In my life, no one has ever caught me. So that's the type of speed we're dealing with. And you see it on tape. Like, he runs between the tackles and he outruns everyone to the end zone. He can take it around the edge and outrun everyone to the end zone. So, pick your poison sort of situation. Another guy that I'll mention that I like that could be early day 3, maybe late day 2, Evan Hull out of Northwestern. He's more of a James Conner type back, not to invoke the Steelers here, but he gives you, he's sort of a workhorse back. He's faster than he looks. He did everything in that Northwestern offense because that Northwestern offense stunk. He would run the Wildcat at times, and he can make plays in the passing game as well. So he gives you that added versatility, and he is tough. He takes hit after hit. He's hard to bring down, and I love the way he played in the season. Went to the Senior Bowl, had a really good Senior Bowl there as well. But that could be a target with that 111 pick if running back is the position they decide to target there. I don't think he goes day 2, but maybe he does if the team really likes him.
All right. Final one, Ryan Wilson. We appreciate the time here. CBS Sports NFL Draft and NFL Analyst. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Wilson CBS. Lamar Jackson's situation, the Aaron Rodgers trade to the Jets that we're still kind of waiting for. Do those things come to fruition before draft night? Do we? I don't know if we're going to have an answer on Lamar. I feel like that's going to play itself out here over time. But the Aaron Rodgers trade to the Jets, I'm assuming if you're the Jets, you want those picks this year, but maybe you want to wait a year. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what happens there and how that dictates what could happen on night 1 of the draft.
No, Jason, that's the thing. And I didn't get the Aaron Rodgers thing from the jump. I am not a Jimmy Garoppolo fan by any stretch, but I thought he made more sense in New York, and that it wouldn't cost as much. He's going to be the bridge quarterback, which he's going to be the bridge quarterback anyway, probably in Vegas at some point, and he would fit into that locker room. Now, I know that the 49ers had enough of what was going on there, but we didn't hear about it in the media. It wasn't really a thing, and you saw him laughing on the sidelines once. Aaron Rodgers feels like if he doesn't want to put his heart and soul into it, he ain't going to put his heart and soul into it. And that's the concern, because he's in his late 30s. He could retire at any moment. You're going to give up a ton to get this guy, and then maybe he decides to hang it up at the end of the season. And where you're at, where are you? And my concern also is that defense is so good. You don't need Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers in the prime. You can sort of win with Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo is an upgrade over Mike White. Mike White did some pretty good things last year when he wasn't hurt. But anyway, that ain't going to happen. So they're basically locked into Aaron Rodgers. I don't know when it's going to happen. You would imagine that the Packers would like to have some compensation before the draft, but the Packers may be in a situation where, like, you know what, let's just get rid of this dude, and whatever happens, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Lamar feels a little more likely to happen, right? It just feels like, I wish Lamar had an agent so the agent can handle everything for him, but that's not the world we live in. But I feel like Lamar is just taking his time and maybe making a statement. I don't know, but it feels like that situation is much more. It's much closer to being resolved than certainly what's going on with New York and Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I don't know that. And that's bad news for the rest of the AFC North. It's great news for the Ravens. But again, sort of tying this together, if I'm the Jets, I'm just going after Lamar. I'm willing to pay the 2 first-round picks. You're going to have to pay him a boatload of money, but you're going to have to pay Aaron Rodgers as well, even if it's over a shorter-term deal. So we'll see how these play out. It does feel like the Ravens and Lamar will sort something out certainly sooner and probably on better terms than what the Packers and Aaron Rodgers end up doing. But I don't know what Aaron Rodgers and the Jets and the Packers, what that holdup is. Although I think Joe Douglas said recently that he's going to be a Jet. It's just a matter of when. And at this point, who knows?
Amen to that. Ryan Wilson, appreciate the time. Know you're a busy man. We wish you all the best here over the next couple of weeks. Just get to that first week in May, man. First week in May, and a couple cold beverages waiting on the back end. So I wish you all the best. Thank you for your time, man, and appreciate it. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Wilson CBS. Follow all of his content at cbssports.com and throughout CBS's multiple platforms on the sports front. Ryan, appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks to Ryan Wilson for his time. Make sure you like and subscribe today to the best podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out, youtube.com/Browns, for all of the episodes from the best podcast available. Thanks to Ryan Wilson. Thanks to Anthony Bacco for all of his hard work as well behind the scenes. For Ryan Wilson, for Anthony Bacco, I'm Jason Gibbs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the best podcast available.